Welcome to the Up in Your Family Business podcast, where we dive into the heart of family business with intimate interviews, expert insights, inspirational stories, valuable resources, and practical tips to help grow your family business. Hi, I'm Todd Rimer, co-owner of Element 212 and the host of the Up in Your Family Business podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Whether you're watching or just listening in, we're glad to have you here with us. Each episode is intended to help family business leaders like you gain valuable insights, solve real challenges, find inspiration, grow with purpose and intention, spot new opportunities, stay competitive, and ultimately build a legacy that lasts for generations. Okay. So, Marcy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I got real excited about this one. I think I shared with you, the more I learned about you, the more I saw what you did and the impact that your work has, the more excited I got. So I thought I was ready for our podcast. I'm like, I'm not doing this justice. I gotta spend more time getting ready. Otherwise, I'm gonna blow this one. So I put some extra time in just for you.
I appreciate that.
You're very deserving. So, all right. So sometimes I let our guests introduce themselves, but I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you if you don't
That's
mind.
fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So today we will discuss a topic that couldn't be more relevant for today's business leaders. You would agree? Burnout and disengagement.
Yeah.
All right. They take a serious toll on people and performance. And my guest, Marcy Renken. That's M-A-R-C-Y-R-E-N-K-E-N. Marcy Renken knows firsthand how damaging those both can be. That's why her mission is to help organizations, especially entrepreneurs and family-owned and operated businesses, create exceptional, I said it, I sometimes stumble on that word, exceptional outcomes for their teams by tackling these issues head on.
That's right.
Marcy is, I like your title, Marcy is an exceptional outcomes strategist. I like it. And the founder of Orchestrated Performance, where she helps organizations overcome burnout and disengagement using her proven exceptional outcomes model, which you've trademarked, correct?
Yes, working on that, yeah.
Okay, very cool. Built on the principles of engage, exceed, and excel. She is a military veteran, speaker, author, keynote presenter, entrepreneur, and advocate for special needs families, and we'll get into that part here soon, as well as a wife and mom of 6, which means you're a martyr as well, correct?
Just 6.
You're also a martyr. Marcy brings insights that are practical, powerful, and grounded in real-world experience. So that's our guest, Marcy Renken.
That's right, in the trenches.
In the trenches. And again, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the number one goal of our discussion today is to show you how prioritizing employee engagement and well-being can transform your business. Marcy wants you to walk away with actionable strategies you can implement immediately to reduce burnout and foster a thriving workplace culture.
That's right.
It's a big task.
It's so easy.
High expectations. Exceptional expectations.
That's right.
All right. So here's what we're going to do first, Marcy. We talked about this. Before we get into your organization and what it does, I think it'd be really good. I think there were some, as we talked about defining moments, some life experiences that you had really critical times in your life. And I think it's important for the listeners and those watching to understand your background a little bit. We don't have to start back in first grade or anything like that.
Aw.
But I think what I think would be great is let's touch on those 3 big experiences in your life that really had a great impact on your life as an individual, as a parent, as a professional, and share what you want about those.
Sure.
And I think that would put everything more in context.
Yeah.
And then we can dive into the nitty-gritty of everything,
That'd be great.
the meat of this, okay? All right. So we're going to talk about 3 things. What you learned from your dad, who was an entrepreneur. Then you're going to talk about some things tied to your experience in the Army. And then we're going to talk about a severe brain injury, some trauma that your oldest, is that correct?
Yeah.
Experienced. And so people love to hear stories. So let's just jump in. And again, I think this will help people get to know you better. And I think it'll make what we talk about next even more meaningful.
Yeah.
So start. You said you grew up with your dad, who was an entrepreneur, instilled a great work ethic for you, and you learned about a lot from him that impacted your professional journey.
Yeah.
Would you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, what I didn't tell you is my dad has 5 brothers, and I think it's 4 sisters. So he's one of 10 children.
Goodness.
And his dad actually started a construction company.
Okay.
So all the brothers worked that construction company. You know, it was just the natural thing to do. You work for dad.
Wow.
So it was actually a family business.
It's like working on a farm. You all have to work the farm. You all have to work the construction
you
business.
all have to pour concrete.
Wow.
You have to, they erected buildings. It was a small town kind of thing in Greensburg, Indiana. But
In Greensburg, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was the Haggerty Construction Company.
Haggerty, okay.
And my dad worked for them for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
But did I mention 6 brothers?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happens in a family business when you've got a lot of brothers? Sisters make things complicated too, but it got a little tough at times. So he decided to then try to seek out some other opportunities. So he actually moved our whole family to Greenwood, Indiana. And
From Greensburg to Green.
I know it has to be green. My life has to be green.
Did they ever live in Greencastle?
The grass is greener there. So no, not yet.
Okay.
But we ended up moving to Greenwood, and he worked for a company for several years. Well, that company went bankrupt, and he had a choice.
When was that, roughly?
That was like 1990.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been around 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up, he worked for that company. They went bankrupt, and he had to choose, do I find another job? He could be a foreman. He could be, someone that kind of guides teams there in construction. Well, he did interview, and we were about to move up to the northwest side of Indianapolis to a new area. We were interviewing the schools. I remember walking into, I think it was Ben Davis, if I recall, and thinking, wow, this school is so big.
It's huge, right?
So
yeah.
big. Like I went to Greenwood, and I was just an elementary kid, but it was a different change. Well, him and that boss, after a few weeks, he realized that was not going to be a good fit for him. So
Wow.
His next
had you already moved?
No, we had not moved yet.
Okay, good.
I remember going to the executive's house, and it was so cool. I was like, wow, look at this huge house, this huge estate. This is so cool. This is a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just didn't he kind of butted heads, with his new boss, and decided, you know what? We're going to move back home to that tiny little town of 1,400 people in Westport, Indiana.
Oh.
Back to the exact same house that my parents bought when they got married.
Really?
And they were going to start over in that little house. They had rented it out for many years to different relatives and people.
Oh, that's how you're going to move in so quickly.
Yeah, that's a whole nother nightmare story. But so he started his own business. Instead of Haggerty Construction, it was Jim Haggerty Construction. And his goal was to pour concrete, a lot of foundation. He did some foundation work, but mostly like driveways, retaining walls, and that sort of thing. And he was very successful. He kept it kind of small. Mm-hmm. He enjoyed bringing in people as subcontractors. He didn't want to have his own employees. He was kind of a small town, one man shop, but he had some great partnerships through the years. And I got to kind of grow up around that and experience that and see his work ethic and just how hard he worked. And it was great. My mom was the bookkeeper, so that was pretty awesome to see.
That's cool, little family business going there.
Yeah, that's right.
It's amazing. I've had other guests where they talked about that, and it's really funny how, women seem to be good with finances. Yeah. And it's amazing how often when a husband starts a business, the wife steps in and takes care of like HR and finances and scheduling, and it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, and he had several family members. Even some of his brothers came to do some jobs with him.
Really?
And my oldest sister, Tina, she worked with him over the summer between college and that sort of thing. My brother, I think, did a little work with him. I'm one of 5, and then another sister worked with him. And by the time it got to me, I was kind of like, I don't think concrete's really my thing. I don't really want to work that hard.
It's hard to do public speaking on concrete.
Right,
you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be talking about burnout and engagement and things like that. So obviously, finding purpose in your work. Going to work and feeling like you're making a difference, that what you do is meaningful. One of the things you said is when you observed your dad or your experience with your dad, that's when you really first got firsthand experience with the word purpose.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did purpose become, what did you learn from your dad about purpose?
Well, what was always fascinating to me, and I don't know that he knows this, but just observing him in conversation with people and working within what the client that he was working with wanted, he would always make things work. He would take his profit margin so low that my mom is like, okay, honey, we do have to make money here. This isn't a business, we have to kind of make this work. But he he would give back. He'd do things for churches and the local community. And he was in Kiwanis. He was involved in Boy Scouts.
Wow.
He just was always involved, always giving back. And I know sometimes my mom would give him grief because he didn't go to every single choir concert, every single, band concert. But at the same time, I could see how hard he was working.
For the kids?
Yeah, exactly. But I just love seeing that witness, really, of seeing not just that you're pouring concrete for people, but that you're actually serving a purpose.
What do you think was his ultimate purpose? Just people, relationships, getting the work. Like, what do you think his ultimate purpose was?
Well, he's really traditional, so I think he just really saw himself as the provider. He wanted to provide for his family, and that was the purpose. I think he continues to live on. Like, he's retired. He's in his 70s, but he just finally retired this last year. He's like, he's going to work until the day he, is no longer able to work. So it's really cool to see that. And now he has purpose in his grandkids and spending time, the quality time with us. And
that's cool.
It's really great.
That's cool. So you learned a lot from just, you said, do you say you worked for your dad a little bit yourself or no?
The closest I ever got to working with my dad was when they remodeled the entire house that we grew up in.
Okay.
And I asked what I could do.
Okay.
And they gave me and my cousin a paint scraper, and I was so excited.
Okay.
And this shed that was out front, it's basically a habitat restore. It's like 3,000 square foot shed. And the sides of the shed, the paint was peeling. So me and my cousin had paint scrapers, and we were going to strip the paint so that they could repaint it. And there's no way.
That's a lot of work.
They just made us busy. They weren't really set out to put us on a job.
Gotcha.
It was really like they're willing to do it. All right, we'll put them out there. It gets us out. Get them out of our hair.
That's really good. I like it. Okay. Anything else about your dad?
I don't know. The other thing I just love is, again, this is kind of like it's a marriage story too. My mom and my dad, where my dad's like, oh, this is just fine, or we can jerry rig this, if I'm allowed to say that word. I don't know if anybody knows what it means, but we're going to make this work, little duct tape, can fix this. And as long as it's functional, it's fine. It doesn't need replaced. So
I think the term now is MacGyver it.
There we go. MacGyver. Yeah. That aspect of being thrifty, being conservative, I think has paid off well for our family and me now, where I don't mind just getting my hands dirty and doing projects around my house. My husband knows that if I have an idea to remodel something or to do something and he doesn't act on it, he knows I will start it. Okay. And I'll get it done.
So your dad had a purpose in life. So would you say he loved what he did and he enjoyed working?
Oh, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So then when he came home, he was happy?
I would say he worked so hard that when he came home, he was unplugged.
He was tired.
Yeah. Like his chair, my grandpa was the same way. He'd sit in his chair. Well, my dad doesn't chew tobacco. My grandpa would sit in a chair, have his tobacco, and just kind of lay back and, watch the game, whatever was on TV, just kind of veg.
Okay.
And I think I adapted that really well too.
Yeah, it's interesting about purpose because, purpose is a word. I mean, I know it's a word that's been around a long time, but it's not a word that we really talked about much until 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You just go to work and do your job.
Yeah.
But you get paid.
Yeah.
So don't worry we didn't talk about purpose. We didn't talk about your why. We didn't talk about finding meaning in your work. We didn't do that. So that's good that he was able to find that and that you learned that from him because, again, that wasn't very common then.
Yeah, and he was demonstrating to me that if you work hard, you still need to unplug. You still need to check out for a bit because you got to reset.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's go into your Army experience.
Yeah.
All right. I'll let you tell the story, but
Sure.
You shared with me that, I want to make sure I get this right, that in the main, there's a lot you learn from being in the Army, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for serving our country. I think that's really freaking cool. By being in the Army, it further shaped your understanding of purpose and what you learned about resilience under pressure and overcoming challenges.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I will just say that when I joined the Army, I did it for the purpose of really taking the next best step to becoming a famous trumpet player.
Yeah, that's right. You're a bugler, right?
Yeah. So I played trumpet in the Army. When I was a kid, I was always tiny. I was always picked last for everything. And one exception, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was always picked first for Red Rover.
Really?
Do you know the game Red Rover?
Red Rover, move over or something. I forgot that.
Send Marcy on over.
Oh, that's it.
And
Send
it was
Marcy.
a chain of people across the field holding hands, and if you couldn't break their hands, they got to steal you. And whoever.
Gosh, I forgot that game when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was tiny and weak. So here I was, I was picked first in Red Rover, but everything else, it's like, oh no, she's not going to be good at dodgeball. She's not going to be good at sports or any of that sort of thing. So I'm joining the Army out of high school. I was a $103, 103 pounds, and I was going to be a soldier.
Wow.
And
I mean, the stuff you put the stuff you put on your back weighed more than you sometimes.
Right.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah. When I was headed to Iraq in 2003, my equipment weighed 85 pounds.
That's what. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it put me at put me at close to 200.
Right, but I mean that was almost your weight. That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was crazy to go into the military. I remember telling my recruiter, I'm going to prepare. I'll be ready. And then I had no clue. I ran around my parents' 3-acre property maybe 3 times. I played golf in high school.
They run you a lot.
Like I didn't do anything physical outside of gym class. So I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you in there 4 years?
I was in the Army for 5 years.
For 5 years.
Yeah, that's the only reason I ended up getting deployed to Iraq. Actually.
Okay. Because of the 5th year.
Yeah, there's another little side story there, but I was at Fort Drum, New York, upstate New York, and it was not a great environment for me. I think I was probably immature at that time, but it felt negative, really negative, and I could do nothing right. There were several women in leadership there that did not seem to care much for me, so they just kind of made life a little harder. I wasn't great at running, so there were a lot of things kind of stacked against me.
You got picked last again.
Yes, exactly. But what I learned so going back to like when I went into the Army, like at basic training, I was one of the kids. I was a kid that was told to get off the track at 25 minutes, and all we had to do was run 2 miles. It was our initial like physical fitness test.
Yeah.
And 25 minutes, and I couldn't finish 2 miles. Mm-hmm. And then I went from that at the beginning of that basic training to the end where I was running 8.5-minute miles, and which was well within what I needed to do to qualify. Yeah. And then I went in. You had to be able to do, I think, at least 1 push-up, and I kind of faked my way through 1 push-up, and I'm sure it was horrible form. But by the end of basic, again, I'm like 20, 25 push-ups in a 2-minute time, and then sit-ups are hard. They're hard if you don't use your thighs, and I learned that I'm not strong enough to hold. No one wanted to be my partner because you have to hold down their feet when they're doing sit-ups, and most guys especially use their thighs for sit-ups. They didn't use their abs,
right? Which
maybe is okay, but I thought we were supposed to use our abs, so I never engaged. Yeah, so it's kind of weird how things work out physically, but through the time in the Army, I did figure out how to run better. I did figure out how to kind of gain that strength. But I always kind of struggle with that little like child voice in my head, like, you're not strong enough. You can't do this.
Really?
So yeah, it kind of carried over through some moments until actually it was a deployment in Iraq where I had a staff sergeant approach me. We were filling sandbags, and we had to pass the sandbags down a line to stack around our tents to, one, hold the tents down because the sandstorms were horrible and would layer our gear with just insurmountable amounts of sand, and then second to prepare ourselves and to give us a berm or a layer of protection in case we were bombed, basically. So, but I couldn't lift a sandbag. They're like 40 to 50 pounds. Some of those guys are like, we're going to fill it to the top because then we have to fill less of them. And I'm like, I can't lift them.
That's a lot of weight.
So I was volunteering to go watch, the weapons. I'll go watch these, TPs of weapons we have stacked up over here. And that staff sergeant came over and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching the weapons. He's like, okay, first of all, they don't need a guard. Well, and I'm like, well, I'm not strong enough. I can't lift those sandbags. What good am I going to be?
Did you try to lift one?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. I could fill them. Like I could fill them with the best, but you had to tie them off, then you had to lift them, and what good would, no one wanted to partner with me. They had to lift all of my bags. So I just looked at him and I was like, I'm not strong enough. And he looked me square in the eye and he's like, Sergeant Renken, you may not be strong enough now, but you will become strong.
So do it.
Now get over there.
And do it.
Yeah, just do it.
That's really cool.
And I did. I just slowly over time, those sandbags ended up kind of getting me through some tough times. And yeah, because just before that deployment, I wasn't supposed to be deployed, because one, I was supposed to be transitioning to get out of the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, my husband and I were expecting our first child.
That's what, okay. That puts a little timeline to it.
But that pregnancy ended in a miscarriage.
Oh.
So, a couple weeks after that, they're like, well, now that you're not pregnant,
wow,
here's some orders to go to Iraq with us.
Wow.
So there was a lot I was going through, and had to process kind of on my own for a little while. So there was a lot I learned in just that. I was only there for like 4 or 5 months. So there was a lot I grew through because of what I was faced with.
So two questions I have for you. You're not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I'm going to ask you anyway, just in your own, because you mentioned about, I heard two things. How the impression people had of you and the impression you had of yourself.
Yeah.
What do you think is more powerful, looking back on some of those moments where you doubted yourself and questioned yourself? What's more powerful, what people tell you are, or what you tell yourself you are?
I think they kind of tie together.
Okay.
So the reason I say that is if people tell you something enough times, you start to tell it to yourself.
Right.
And sometimes you tell it to yourself anyways. But I'm a firm believer that it only takes one encounter to change everything. Mm-hmm. And that one encounter with my staff sergeant was something that changed my projection, the way I looked at myself. And I can't say it's one encounter to start that. You still have to check in with yourself. You still have to put positive thoughts into your head, because what you tell yourself is what you're going to be. And if you realize that people are saying things to you, sometimes they may have the right intention. Sometimes they're trying to tear you down because they don't understand where you've been. And if they don't understand where you've been, they don't know where or why it's so important where you're at now, no matter how well or not well off you are. So I think it's kind of both, but what we tell ourselves is absolutely probably the most powerful thing.
So when you were done, did you feel physically and mentally stronger after the 5 years?
Absolutely. Actually, one of the things I did to pass time in Iraq was I think I had a goal of, this goes back to the sit-ups.
Oh, okay.
But I had a goal of doing 500 ab exercises a day.
How many?
500.
Wow.
So 500,
that's a lot.
500 sit-ups, crunches, just a variety of things.
Man, that's a lot.
Yeah, I know.
I do.
And by the end of the day, it's really not like that much, but it gave me
It is a lot. No, I'm in good shape. I go to the gym. I do 90 ab exercises, and my stomach is just tight.
Now I use the ab roller. I do all kinds of fun things. That's
500. So you're not so weak.
No, but
I can only do 90.
But I set that goal for myself, and by achieving that goal every single day, like when I came back, I was for my size, I was pretty buff. I also gained 20 pounds, but it was like muscle, it was physique, it was fitness, and I kind of grew into what my staff sergeant talked about. You will become strong.
That's really cool.
So it was the mental thing I was telling myself, and then kind of using the challenge of pushing myself physically allowed me to kind of navigate some of those things I was dealing with, the weight on my shoulders with the miscarriage and being away from my husband for our first wedding anniversary and resenting that I had to be there when I was supposed to be starting my transition out of the Army, like all these things. I was supposed to go to college in the fall. I was ready. And then everything seemed like it was just delayed and like kind of worst case scenario. And I was able to kind of overcome that through physical means that ironically,
So what did resilience mean to you after those 5 years?
I think, and it's the same thing I tell my kids now, it's not the situation you're in, it's how you respond to the situation you're in. And that was what I had kind of learned in the military. Like there were many days where I was like, I'm not good at running, I can't do this. And when you're not good at something in the Army, they make you do more of it. So I was, running more. When I went to leadership training to become a sergeant, that was, I think it was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I actually was expecting at that point too. I found out I was pregnant when I started leadership training. Like all my big moments happen apparently when I'm about to have a baby. So I was at this training and they had this initial fitness test and I bombed it. Like I didn't run fast enough. And I was like, it's because I found out I was pregnant, so maybe I just can't do what I could do before. Well, instead of just accepting that and being challenged or not being able to continue the leadership training because of it, I was talking to one of the, I forget what they were called, one of the leaders there, one of the sergeants there that were in charge. And he said, Specialist Renken, I just want you to run everywhere you go. Just run everywhere you go. Like if it's time to go to class, if it's time to go to chow, just run. So I spent the next, several weeks just running everywhere I went. And I looked foolish because no one else was running. But I would run. And at the end of I know, right? So two things actually happened out of that. One is I excelled and I did really well at the test there. And two, it's a standard in the Army when you're at a division is to run a 9-minute pace for 4 miles. So it's a 4-mile run in formation. And at the end of that period of me running everywhere, it was the first time in my entire time in the military where I finished a 4-mile run in the formation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it was kind of
That's
cool.
really cool.
And it was just because I was just challenged. He's like, and it goes back like the sit-ups. You just do a little bit every day, and it's going to pay off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not doing more than 90 though. I mean, you've inspired me, but I have. That's weird. I consider myself in good shape, and after 90, I'm sore. I can't do it anymore. I don't know.
You have to add variety.
I got to step it
just
up.
Do sit-ups.
Sergeant Rimer, you can't do 500 now, but someday you will.
That's right.
All right, let's get into the one that's really personal and really close to home and close to your heart. Okay, so we talked about the purpose that you learned from your dad, how you further learned purpose and you gained an insight into resilience and hard work and perseverance and all those words that go with it. Okay, so your firstborn, right, your son, had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and obviously you had a lot to deal with that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure to a certain degree it probably lasted for many years. So it was probably quite a journey. Through that, you shared that you had a deeper discovery of what truly matters in life. And in the process, you shifted your career and personal priorities that shaped your perspective on purpose-driven leadership. So it kind of looks, and I put these in this order because, number one, because chronologically that is the order, but it just seemed like what you learned from your dad, then the Army, and then your son, those three combined with the third one happening, probably really, without you realizing it, kind of set the stage for what would come next for your life.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just give us a little story about what happened with your son, what you learned from it, and how it led into where you are now.
Yeah. In September 2011, my two boys at the time, so Will was 6, and then Dominic was 18 months. They were staying with some friends while we were away for the weekend. And that, that morning in September, I think it was I'm going to get the date wrong, which is a good thing. I've kind of
it's all right.
come to peace with that. Like September 23rd, let's say, 2011. I know, really good at specifics.
Who's going to dispute it? I mean, you could have said any date you wanted.
I know. It was like 1945. Okay. Anyways, so we get this phone call, and it said, Mr. and Mrs. Renken, this is Officer Smith.
Oh, it was a police officer that called you.
You need to.
Not even the parents. Wow.
Yeah. Well, my friend called first, and they said he fell and hit his head. And I was like, okay, we're away on the weekend. Just give him a nice pack.
And you're probably thinking he fell off maybe like a trampoline or an ottoman or something like that.
Like,
the couch.
Give him a nice pack. Give him a hug. Well, let him know Mommy and Daddy love him. Whew. And then a few minutes later, that was when it was Officer Smith, and he's like, Mr. and Mrs. Renken, you can't not come. You guys have to come to Riley Hospital for Children right away. Mm-hmm. And then I told my husband, I was like, okay, I guess we gotta go. I don't.
And you still don't know anything.
I didn't really know anything about it, and I think they didn't want to panic us because we were at Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, which was like 2.5 hours away.
Okay, so they didn't want you. Yeah, it makes sense. That's kind of sensitive.
Yeah, but my husband's kind of calling back, and he's digging in a little bit for more details, and they're mentioning words like intubate. And ventilator. So he's not breathing on his own.
Oh wow.
And actually the real story didn't come out until many years later. So but the real story, I'll just start there because I don't want to get too into the weeds.
That's fine.
But when we got to the hospital, our son, we walked into the room, and we had to wait forever, first of all, because there was a lot going on behind the scenes. But even after a 2.5-hour drive, we had to wait another couple hours to see our son.
What?
And no one was updating us. We had no idea.
Oh, that's horrible.
That's
horrible.
Yeah, my friend Nancy was there, and she just had tears streaming down her face in the waiting room. My parents had rushed there. They were much closer so they could take care of my 18-month-old. And then my friend Nancy she was just in tears. She goes, "I am so sorry."
Her house? Was that her house?
It was at her house. She's like, "I am so sorry." And I was like, "Well, if it's forgiveness you need, you're forgiven." Like, I don't know what happened, but
and you don't even know what he looks like at this point or what's happening.
No, I had no idea the condition, but I gave her a big hug and I was like, you're forgiven. Like, I don't even know what happened, but it doesn't matter what happened. Like, I make mistakes all the time as a mom. Like, I'm not going to lay that on you.
And unfortunately, life happens, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad.
Yeah, and it could have happened on my watch, right? So what had happened is the kids were bouncing on a sofa. A couple of girls that my friend had, they were bouncing on the sofa. And I don't know whose idea it was, but it was a great idea to get the exercise ball and bounce on the exercise ball on the sofa. And
so you're dealing with extra height and loss of balance.
And a super bouncy object. Yeah. And then, so that couch backed up to a railing, and that railing overlooks the 2-story foyer to my friend's house.
2-story.
Yeah. And it's a laminate covered concrete floor. So it's a slab house. Oh. And so my son ended up, bouncing on the exercise ball, launching himself over that railing and falling at least 14 feet onto his head. Wow. Yeah. So, the mixed blessing that I giggle about sometimes is that, the only bone in his body he broke was his skull.
Still.
But he did break it across all 3 skull plates. His brain had a 3% midline shift. Oof. And nothing else was broken in his body, thankfully.
That's incredible.
His spinal cord was fine and intact.
That's incredible.
We didn't know right away. Yeah. So so by the time we saw him, he was covered in a mess of wires. He was ventilated. He had like this bolt coming out of his head to monitor the intracranial pressure, if I got that right, ICP. And then they put a shunt on the back of his head to drain the excess fluid. He's just like, and then his head was so swollen, like he's, he wasn't the same little boy we left yesterday.
Wow. You probably didn't even recognize him, right? He had to have had a lot of swelling.
It was surreal. And then, of course, the droning beeps that you hear in the hospital. Like anytime I'm in a medical facility and I hear the beeps, I'm like, come on, can you just turn this down? And there were times where we're like, can we turn the monitors down? Like, we get it. Like I can see the little things, know. And, so when he was there at the hospital, they said, Mr. and Mrs. Renken, with situations like this where they've had a fall, it's usually 24 to 36 hours for the swelling to come down. So what we're going to do is put him in a medically induced coma because he's not responding quickly enough to to some of the salts. I think it was his liver was metabolizing the salt faster than it was calming down his brain and kind of the way that they do that. So anyways, they put him into a pentabarb coma, and a couple days goes by, which is more than 36 hours, by the way. And the swelling hadn't come down enough. Oh. And then another 2 or 3 days, and the swelling hadn't come down enough. Well, when we were there, there's this Nurse Jen, little side story that I love to tell, and she was talking about. She's just like the perfect nurse. If you're in the ICU of the hospital, like you want Nurse Jen. She like dots all the I's, crosses all the T's, and no one is going to get away with subservice. And she would even like go back on other nurses' notes and stuff and really critique what was going on, which was great for the care of our son. Well, one day there was some like fluid coming from our son's nose, and he just had a brain injury, so this is like not a good sign. So Nurse Jen came and she took a sample of it and she went out and tested it. When she came back, she looked at us and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Renken, we thought it was a problem, but it's not." No, it's not. Your son has a runny nose. And so in that moment, we needed that, right? We're like, okay, whew. So, in ICU, you deal with pneumonia a lot, especially since he was intubated and they were breathing for him. So with his coma, he wasn't really moving, so we had to do exercises and stuff, keep his body moving so he didn't lose. There's so much here. But
how long was he in the hospital? So
in the hospital, a total of 49 days.
49, wow.
And it actually took 13 days before they brought him out of the coma. So it was 13 days in the coma total, and then... Did
he come home, or did he go to a facility?
So after 49 days, he came home. So the Riley had 9 West. It was brand new, just in time for my son's rehabilitation. So he was moved over there, and he had like the moose room, I think it was. Oh. They have like different themed rooms. Okay. Which is another inside joke. But we, so going through that recovery, like the doctors were telling us, Mr. and Mrs. Renken, I always start this way, but that's how they are. Mr. and Mrs. Renken, we don't we can't make any promises. We don't know what your son's outcome is going to be, but he probably won't be the same little boy you knew before. And I think that was really hard.
Yeah. That's probably the hardest part, yeah.
Yeah. So he ended up, I mean, it was like his recovery initially, it was kind of like having a 6-month-old in a 6-year-old's body.
Oh.
So he had to relearn how to do everything, to use his hands, you know, his body. It was kind of a reset, like hey, the life reset.
Wow.
So we got to watch all the milestones again. But he made it through all the milestones. We got to cheer him on through them. So he was walking again. He was using his hands again. He was talking. He was actually the first thing. So after a substantial injury like that, you don't know if the child's going to be a vegetable or not, which is hard to say. But
it takes a while before you know that.
Yeah, so like you're looking at them and they have blank stares. They don't really know who anybody is.
And you don't know. They could be in
Yeah.
deep thought, but you don't know it.
Yeah, but you're not getting any sort of visual.
Right.
Well, there was one time, and we actually caught this on video, and I treasure it so much, where the nurse was trying to get him to interact with his recovery. So she was trying to get him to tell her where to take his blood pressure. And it could be here, it could be on your leg, it could be on wherever. They were kind of letting him do whatever he wanted, as long as they got a response. And he smacked his leg, and she goes, "Good job." And then all of a sudden he just kind of does this like wild hand and sticks out his tongue and like this goofy eyed thing.
So animated.
So, and we hadn't seen anything that resembled him really. Yeah, other than
like
physically.
Personality.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the first thing to come back. And then the next thing the nurse says is, "Oh my gosh, it's like I'm witnessing a miracle."
No, that's wild.
Yeah.
Was he, remember they said to you that your son will never be the same, or however you said it.
Yeah.
Forgive me if we're not quoting you
fine.
on that. But when he had that animated moment where you saw his personality, was that the personality he had before the injury?
He was very playful. We're kind of a goofy family.
Oh, that's
we like
awesome.
to have a lot of fun, and it was just perfect.
That's great.
So that he saw our reaction to it. So anytime we would do something, like that was the only reaction he would have. It's just something super silly and goofy. Like we would do some selfies, like, "Hey, it's mom," like to let people know what was going on. "Hey, it's mom, and this is Will," and he's like, he just sticks his tongue out and like looks cross-eyed. Like he won't say anything. He just looks goofy. So it was really an amazing thing to see for him. And then as he was able to start voicing his words, which for a while he had some really significant speech aphasia, where he can't say what he means to say, so he'll replace things. Like,
I have that sometimes.
Yeah, so one of the things
I think it's happened on this podcast.
Right, well, that's true. Well, one of the things that I always laughed at was he liked to have piggyback rides. So he'd go to my husband and he'd say, "Daddy, I want a piggy bank ride."
Oh.
Yeah, so
piggy bank.
Or he would look at a pineapple and he wanted some pineapple. He'd say, "I'd like SpongeBob." You know, it's like just different things like that.
That's funny.
Yeah, so word retrieval was a challenge. So going back into school was quite a challenge. We thought we were going to go home with a feeding tube and a wheelchair, and we did. As soon as the people showed up with the wheelchair delivery, we sent it away.
Really?
He was making such amazing progress and making such big strides that it was truly miraculous. Like his ability to even be alive is miraculous, but then his recovery has been surreal.
I like what you did there. It's funny. As soon as you said that, it made me think of you. You guys did not let you guys, Will, correct? So you did not let Will guard the weapons.
Yeah.
You made him carry the sandbags.
Yeah. Like we supported him every
That's
way
really
we could,
cool.
but yeah.
Because usually when something like that happens, you want to coddle them and, you want to protect them and take it easy. But man, if he was going to really fully recover, if he was going to, whatever his destination was, his destiny was, reach his potential, it wasn't going to happen by coddling and baby him. I mean, it was unfortunate he was in that situation, but you guys, I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like you were like, we're gonna do this. Yeah. So we have to challenge him. He's gonna have to work hard. Yeah. But he'll get there.
Yeah.
So
it
was
tough. Yeah, I made a little book for him that
that's
had
really
pictures.
Good.
I made a book that has like his pictures and stuff of like what he went through in his accident, and then kind of a way to kind of update him and show him how amazing he is, so that he could carry it with him. And that little book we started sharing with friends and family, and we actually kept a Carrying Bridge journal all through his recovery, because, responding to text messages and all that, it's like a lot.
Yeah.
So when you can have a portal to like just share information, it's pretty awesome. So people started sharing back with us like a guest book entry. Mm-hmm. And what people were sharing back with us was just how impacted they were by what we were going through. And we started seeing other people making positive changes because we were sharing what we were going through.
Oh, yeah.
So I think one of the mentors I have is like, let your long road be someone's roadmap. Mm-hmm. So what you've gone through, let someone else have it, or be their shortcut even. It's
interesting because, I asked you earlier about when you were sharing your story about the Army, what was more impactful, all those years? Was it what people told you or you told yourself? But think about it. When I think of your son, Will, what you guys said and the level of confidence and assurance and positivity you guys did, that was everything.
Yeah.
That was everything.
Yeah.
If you guys came in, it's amazing. It's amazing what people are willing to do when people say, hell yeah, you can do this.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah, and we've met a lot of families along the way. Tragedy does not bring families together. It does not. It shows maybe the foundation that you had before and whether it was sturdy or not.
Oh, so it more reveals truth.
It does. My husband and I had actually restored our marriage and went through this enormous transformation just the year prior to that. And no doubt that's how we've been able to navigate it, is because we were able to look at all of our ugliness and like figure things out at a core level. And because of that foundation, we were able to navigate this so much easier and with resilience. And there were moments, where we struggled. We had to go through some grief therapy because even though there wasn't a loss of a life, there's still the loss of what could be or what could have been. Mm-hmm. So going through that grief therapy.
Thank God he wasn't paralyzed.
Yeah,
it's a miracle.
Yeah,
it's really a miracle.
Absolutely.
Just short of it's a miracle he didn't die.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, but just to see what he's come through, and then whenever we share his story, just seeing the transformation that people see in us, and then oh my gosh, so now, like I always say that he has an invisible disability because he doesn't look disabled, he doesn't really act disabled, and you wouldn't even know he's been through anything if you didn't really get to know him. Like there's some weird quirks and nuances and stuff that mostly just people that are close to him know about, but in society, it makes him look like sometimes he's disengaged, or sometimes it looks like he doesn't care.
It takes him longer to process.
So people judge him, or they might jump to conclusions, or they might treat him harshly, or they can get him to buy into something stupid quicker because they can kind of do that to him. And it makes it kind of tough. So his life is a little different, but every time we kind of go the extra mile to like kind of share his story, it makes all the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So let's segue now into, well, first of all, these 3 stories.
Yeah.
Do you incorporate these into when you do public speaking, or when you do your
Yeah,
Okay,
I do. Absolutely.
Okay. So I wasn't far off introducing.
No, you're doing great.
Okay.
It's almost as if I told you exactly what to say, but I promise I haven't.
Okay. So for those, I hope you're still with us. I know we haven't gotten into the meat of the interview yet, but I feel like these 3 stories not only shed light on who you are and your life journey, but I think it sets the stage for who you became after that. And I have no idea how many. I'm assuming it was many years, but at what point? What was it about these experiences? I'm assuming it really plateaued with your son's situation. Just segue in from, okay, you're going through this tough journey with your son, regardless of the progress and the positive moments you're having, it's still a struggle. Then you go on to have 4 more kids on top of the 2. So that's a wow. I think a lot of people would have been like, my son's in this situation, we're done.
Yeah.
And you had 4 more.
Well, that was my husband. He's like, yeah, we can't do this anymore because I don't want anything to happen to any more children.
Right. There's always the one, and then there's the other one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it about these 3 stories, how they all kind of culminate? These are building blocks in your life.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if your Army experience was great and your father inspired you, but I'm willing to bet that if you didn't have the situation with your son, Orchestrated Performance may never have come to fruition.
Absolutely.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and segue from your experience? Because that's that's many years.
Yeah.
So we could do a whole podcast just on that part.
Yeah.
But let's segue. How did all these experiences, culminating with your son's situation, how did that inspire you to go, I got to combat burnout and disengagement? So what was going on in your life that made you go, I'm going through this. I know other people are going through this. I need to make it my life mission to do something about this. So tie those two together.
Yeah. Growing up in a family business, and I learned that work ethic, right? And I learned how to work really hard and really, I would argue, probably long hours. And then the military, I was kind of working almost 24/7 sometimes, even though I was in the band. So there were a lot of other things. It was a lot of fun, but applying that work ethic through the military, that showed me the strength that I had all along. And then transitioning that into going off to college to pursue trumpet, and then transitioning into, actually, I got a degree in economics.
Oh.
And then since there were no major openings.
So your mom did inspire you.
Right. That's true. I didn't thought about that. But you're right. Yeah, no, her fine detail, like, definitely comes through my personality.
There you go.
I love analytics. I love getting
Gotta plug your mom.
Right. Yeah, mama.
All right. Story number 2.
Right.
Mom. Okay.
I know, but no, I always wanted to be like my mom.
That's cool.
There were no major openings for economists. The government didn't really have anything for me, so I ended up going into real estate sales.
There wasn't Doge yet, right?
Right. I'm sort of like overdriving your mic here. I'm so excited. But I went into real estate sales instead. It was the next best option, and it actually worked really well with my personality. I'm very extroverted, but very detail oriented, which works really well in sales. And then I'm very people oriented. So I wanted, I'm a wooer. I love to win others over. I love to engage with others and really get to the meat of their story. Like, I'm not usually sharing so much of my story. It's usually I'm like, tell me about you.
That's nice.
So in that process, I was able to kind of like still apply that work ethic and that drive. But there came a point where, because there were so many things I was learning about, this is how you are successful. And it's by making more money. It's by doing this. And in order to do that, you have to put in more time, more energy. So I ended up, my first year in real estate, I did really well. I was like in the top 10 rookies, but I still didn't make a lot of money, because I started real estate in 2008, by the way.
So you didn't get back into concrete at any time?
No, I didn't. Never went back to concrete.
All
so
right.
I went into real estate.
I thought maybe that's what
Right. No, so 2008, like the housing market blew up. My husband and I won't get into all the details, but we moved from Boston to Indiana, and we sold our house in Boston and lost $40,000.
Oh, great.
It was before short sales were cool, so we just took it on in debt. And my first year in real estate, I made maybe $4,000 in profit. After all the expenses. Right. So my husband's like, I don't know about this, babe. So it was really stressful. Oh. And then we had a toddler. Will was a toddler at the time.
Okay.
And then that transitioned to the end of my second year in real estate. I did really well, really well. And I was able to pay off all of our Boston debt and put us back in the green.
Great.
But I was burned out.
Okay.
I was still playing trumpet. I was playing in the Philharmonic Orchestra of Indianapolis. I was playing in the Carmel Symphony. I was playing with the Hendrix Symphony Orchestra, and I was playing at church, and I was playing in a rock band, a 70s cover band.
Get out of here.
No, seriously.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so every once in a while I play with, I think they're still
music.
around. They're like a charity band, Henley and the Loops. So I played with them for a little bit. And then later on I would play with the Circle City Sidewalk Stompers. So I love music still.
Huh.
But okay, I have a husband and a toddler also, right? So talk about balance. So I was burning myself out, and I thought it was real estate. So I just cut the string. I was like, I can't do it. And then we were expecting our second child. So woo.
You mentioned the 70s music. I always tell people, they always ask the wrong question. What's your favorite music, 60s and 70s or 80s and 90s? I'm like, you got it all wrong.
Yes.
70s and 80s. It's the wrong combo.
I like it all.
I like 70s music a lot.
I love oldies, and I love.
I do too. I still like the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I like a little of everything, honestly. Yeah. And from orchestral stuff and classical stuff, because I'm very classically trained as a trumpet player. And, yeah. Anyway, so these things. I know there's so much here.
Hey, quit tooting your horn, okay?
Right. I know.
Oh, come on. That was a good one. Come
on. It was all right. I'm gonna giggle. Ha ha ha. Yeah. So I was burnt out, and that was when. This is where my mom gets credit. I was like, I think I got this all wrong. So instead of being gung-ho working to succeed and making all kinds of money in real estate, I swung the pendulum the entire other way. And I was like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
I'm going to stay home with my kids.
Cool.
So I did that. And then I had postpartum depression. And regardless of how burnt out I was working, 60 to 80 hours a week in real estate, I was more burnt out as a mom. Sleep when the baby sleeps. I took that very seriously. And babies sleep a lot. And it kind of put me into kind of a dark place.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I wanted to get out of that dark place. So then I started trying to see what other options there were. And I got a little bit of sales with Mary Kay. And then I was like, I need to be a famous trumpet player. I just need to put in a lot of practice hours. But I just couldn't get myself out of that kind of darkness. And then I started to pick up like this temporary job in unique home solutions, selling hardcore, which is like not in your face, but in a nice way, like at Kmart. Before Kmart went under, I would walk through a Kmart store in my little polo shirt and khakis and ask people if they had entered the $25,000 sweepstakes for a home makeover. And then I would continue with an interview and get their name and information and find out about their house and their problems. And I would connect them with an associate so that they'd schedule an appointment. And that's how I made money.
And they did that at Kmart?
Yeah.
Because they kind of have.
They do it at trade shows too.
Yeah, well, they do that. Not the exact same thing, but like if you go into a Costco, they always have these independent contractors set up about asking about your phone and different
I
things.
believed in it. I knew the dialogue. I thought it was great. my stomach did not like it. My stomach was tied in knots. It was too emotional for me. It was too much.
Wow.
Even for this extroverted person, it was too much for me. So I stepped back and I was like, this is not it. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't succeed in anything. And that was around the time my son had his accident as well.
So these doubts were coming back into your...
Yeah. So I think the accident was actually before Unique Home Solutions, but all these things, kind of came back. And then after sharing my son's story through Caring Bridge, I started realizing that people were transformed because of me. And then a seed was planted to share his story.
Okay.
And to share the experiences I've experienced and how I was able to kind of overcome these things. And I ended up getting a phone call inviting me back into real estate sales. So I was like, it's something I can do. I was kind of good at it. All right, I'll do that. So I did real estate sales for a long time again. But then there's always just been this little thing that's like, but there's more, but there's more, but there's more. Like I can serve people through real estate. You can serve people no matter what job you have. But I just kept feeling this pull to doing something more. Like there was a different purpose. So my son's accident also showed me that maybe my priorities weren't lined up right. That maybe I should be spending a focused time on, my faith and my family. And then work is kind of like next, because if you're working to make a better life for you, but you don't take any time for that better life, like what's the point? If you're spending all your time working and not taking the time for your family and living a more balanced life, like there might be times where you have to work a lot of extra, especially if you're an entrepreneur, your family-owned business, like your listeners. But there are times where like you kind of need to reset. You need to make sure, no matter what, that you do have time for those relationships in your life. I mean, that's ultimately, I think, why we do what we do, And that's kind of what's led me here today.
So did you have an epiphany? Like what, so there was something pulling on you and you felt like you had a very specific purpose. So what was it that made you go, I think I'm going to start orchestrated performance and I think I'm going to focus on burnout and engagement? Like what made you feel like you were positioned to do that? And what made you think like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing and this is what I'm going to focus my life on? Was there a click or was it more of a gradual thing? I mean, how did it come to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, to parallel this story a little bit, back in 2013 when I jumped back into real estate, I was invited to Toastmasters. Okay. And that's where I started learning that I could speak on anything I wanted to speak on. And it gave me some skills and some foundation. So then fast forward to when I had the pull strong enough to make another change in 2022. I decided, maybe real estate isn't the thing. I need to look out for something else. My friend, I said, actually, I did say this. If there was someone that could just see me for who I am and invite me into the perfect job and like see the value that I have to offer, I would take it in a heartbeat.
I think, it's funny you say that. I think we all think of that. Like, I think we all know there's something, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I sometimes think about it. I've been doing this 17 years. I'm like, is this still, am I still doing what God intends for my life? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
But so what's funny is that very next weekend, I'm like slapping your table, the very next weekend, a friend at church comes up to me and says, Marcy, there's an opportunity at Catholic Charities that I think you'd be perfect for.
Huh.
And I'm like, okay, God, I'm listening.
That's really cool.
But they had a volunteer coordinator for immigrant and refugee services.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is the next step. This is the thing, I can be out there. I'm serving others. I can fill my purpose, and it's
touching people on a more personal level,
right,
more spiritual level.
Yeah, such a heart job. So I stepped out of my comfort zone and into that world. But that wasn't where I was supposed to be. What it did was it showed me that all I have to do is pursue my purpose, and it will like the path will be lit. I stepped into that and then had the epiphany. I think I'm supposed to be showing people how to live with purpose.
Wow.
My purpose is to show others.
Did you kind of feel it?
Yeah.
It was real strong?
Yeah. Like I get goosebumps when I talk about it. But when I was like, I need to show other people that they're focusing on the wrong thing. They're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, how can I shift that? And if I went through burnout and disengagement and was like checked out, and some of it may have been postpartum depression, but a lot of it was like I was working myself to the bone, and I didn't really have time to benefit from the fruits of my labor. So when I kind of made that realization, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own business. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to start my own business. I'm supposed to speak, and I'm supposed to share what I've experienced with other people and show them how they can face these challenges head on too. And that's kind of where the infant stages of orchestrated performance began. And this is fun. So I said, okay, God, do with me what you will. As soon as I put in my notice for that job so that I could pursue my passions and start my own business, we found out. This
was the Catholic organization? Yeah.
We found out we were expecting number 6.
Shit. I mean, you always have, you said it again, right?
Every time.
You're probably telling your husband, oh, I just found out today I'm pregnant. Big change in my life coming.
I know, and it's
Crazy.
not even just the baby. I know, it's so funny. Like I should look at every child's birth and see what changed. Yeah, as if that's not enough. But yeah. So then God's like, all right, I'll show you. And then, so it started kind of as this mom with purpose. I'm going to help moms, that were like me. And then.
Oh, so first start out that way. Okay.
And then as I talked to more people, I was realizing I wasn't just speaking to moms. I was speaking to dads. I was speaking to
anybody and
people
everybody
that were single in like just anyone in relationship, anyone in, that's working, or anyone that's trying to figure out how they can get out of this kind of. Ugh.
So is orchestrated performance more about speaking to the individual, or are you trying to teach owners of companies and leaders of companies, or both, or like who's your audience?
Well, it's kind of twofold. Primarily, my goal is to be in front of audiences and organizations to encourage them, to inspire them, to want to engage on a more personal level. So it's twofold, because not just do the job. Yeah, one is like empowering your employees. Like, do your employees know? My cousin is a CEO, and he said it's decision rights. Do your employees know what rights they have to make decisions, or do you give them, empower them supposedly, and then take away those rights to make those decisions? Are you letting them be a part of the creative process, which I think ultimately we desire? We want to be part of a bigger picture. We want to, and that's the purpose driven. And then the next part is the engagement. Like, are you engaging people? Do you know what's going on in your employees' lives? Like, if you have someone that's not really performing well, do you know why? Like, there's always more to the story. Do you have a regular review with them that's not just about job performance, but about life? Hey, how can we as our company help you align our goals with yours? Like, how can we support you in that way? And when you do that, when you start to focus on the individual and see life not just through the corporate lens, but through your employees' lens, it opens up a world of possibility. And then suddenly they feel more engaged. They feel more empowered.
Okay. The reason I asked that question about who your audience is because you shared when we talked that burnout is not just an individual problem. It's an organizational challenges that requires systemic solutions. Right. And then you said employee engagement is directly tied to business success. Investing in your people leads to exceptional outcomes. So just expound on that a little bit. So when you talk to people. First you started with moms, then you realized this touched everybody. Mm-hmm. So are you, when you speak, are the leaders themselves the ones actually proactively inviting you in to speak to their employees, or is it, do they realize that when you come in, you're actually speaking to them too? I mean, how does that work?
Right. Well, and it's kind of like
what motivates someone to say, I need Marcy to come speak to my company organization? How does that happen?
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm motivating them with, the potential for revenue growth, right?
Right.
And the potential for employee growth. Showing your employees that you care enough about them to give them a possibility forward. I mean, there's every year, $8.8 trillion is lost in our global economy.
I mean, it's funny. You started saying that, right? When I reached for my statistics.
Yeah, and my question to organizations is like, would you like to have a piece of that pie? I mean, $8.8 trillion?
Well, it's funny because before we planned to have this conversation, I mean, I know what burnout is, and I know what employee disengagement is, but I knew it was a problem, but until I looked it up, I thought, okay, I gotta know what I'm talking about here,
right?
A little bit, and it said here that through a Gallup poll. I'm stealing your thunder. So.
No, that's fine. You're great.
So I'll take the pressure off you having to remember it off the top of your head. In a Gallup poll recently, 51% of employees are disengaged in the workplace.
Yeah.
Disengaged means feeling miserable at work and spreading negatively to their colleagues. I'm like, holy, half the people are miserable.
Yeah,
and they're throwing that around.
Yeah, colleagues is one thing, but what if you're serving clients?
Right. I mean, you're gonna feel it and show it and speak it everywhere. And then it says here, only a small portion of U.S. employees are engaged at work, with the Gallup reporting only around 33%. Mm-hmm. And then burnout, some studies have shown that 8 out of 10 workers globally.
Yeah.
So this is not just a U.S. problem.
Right.
This is globally.
Worldwide, yeah.
82% of workers globally are experiencing burnout. Burnout can lead to physical and emotional exhaustion. You experience that, right?
Yeah.
Diminished job performance, increased absenteeism, lower job satisfaction, and long-term health problems. A significant percentage, and this is, now I'd like to hear you speak to this. So this is what really caught my attention. A significant percentage of employees feel that their HR department, so if there is an HR department, in some companies it's the owner, in some companies it's an actual HR person, they don't care. They don't encourage conversation about burnout. So burnout's becoming a big thing.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like you're a sounding board for some of this stuff, because we read about it on LinkedIn, we read about it in social, but I don't know if too many people are doing anything about it. I don't know if it's because they don't care or because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of organizations, and not even excluding myself, is like, to fix this problem, we just need to have more systems in place. More oversight, more control, because if we just had enough control over exactly what we're expecting from our employees, then we can analyze them, and if they're a bad apple, we can just get rid of them. But it just adds more pressure and more pressure. So my goal is to no, it's much simpler than that. It really is about perspective. Like if you look back at my son's story and the way that the world sees him, they don't see him in the right light, right? They don't know who he is.
They don't know until they know.
Yeah,
right.
And every individual, every one of us has an amazing story behind us. We have an entire life behind us. We have all of our past experiences that we bring to every situation. You as an employer, you as a family-owned business owner, even in your own family, too much sometimes in a family business, but when you're in an organization or any kind of business, there's a story behind that individual, and you may not even know the full extent of it. You don't know their life experiences. And if you're expecting one outcome, but you're coming from a different experience than someone else, you have to figure out why it's so hard. And usually it's because you're coming from two different perspectives.
Okay.
So kind of getting down to that, the perspective, and sometimes the perspective is okay, our company has a mission. Each individual has a mission, whether they know it or not. And maybe your mission is just work to live or just survive. I'm just here for the paycheck. I think there's a lot of emotion or mentality behind that. I'm just here for my time, I'm doing my time, and then I'm done for the day and I'm checked out. But it impacts every aspect of your life. How successful you are at work impacts your home life. How successful you are at home impacts your work life. And I've seen it firsthand with my friends, with my own family. It's huge. So I think a lot of times people want to throw another system at it. They want to throw another training.
Process.
They want to,
or a process.
yeah, we're just going to throw them through this other training program or whatever. And my goal with Orchestrated Performance is to look at organizations individually, the same way that I'm challenging them to look at their employees individually, is to customize something that works for them based on what challenges they are specifically facing as an organization.
Oh, so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
No.
I mean, it's a.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still have the model,
Right.
but when you get down into the nitty-gritty details, it's more unique.
Yeah,
to that
I want to make sure that it's directed at what their outcomes that they are hoping for.
Do you go in? Do you actually? So I know you're a public speaker, and I know you do workshops and things like. Have you ever gone in and implemented one of these in a company? Have you done that yet?
I've worked with some proposals. I've got one out right now that is.
So you're at that level now. You got to the point. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm working on a kind of a leadership program.
Oh, cool.
The client is telling me, there's a lot of things, people aren't dressing professionally. They're not showing up professionally, and we serve a lot of clients, and that's the face of our business. And then also people are being promoted into leadership roles, but they're just doing their job. Yeah. And they don't know how to lead people because they haven't really either had it modeled for them. So how can you help us to create this leadership culture? So so that's kind of what I'm working with them on. Yeah. How does
an employer, whether they care or not? I mean, let's just stick with the people that do care.
Okay.
I think most do.
I think they
especially
do.
Family, especially my audience. Family businesses do care. I mean, they really care about their team members. Yeah. So what are some signs? We're so busy doing our work. How does an owner, an employer, a leader, how do they identify that there's burnout and disengagement? What are some of the signs? What should they be looking for?
Well, I think the most obvious signs are just the way people carry themselves.
Okay.
And there's energy that we each have. And this last weekend I was at a workshop that was talking about how within 4 to 5 feet of you, people can feel your energy. If it's negative, you're going to take away, that positivity. So when you're in a place, you walk into a room and it feels lit up and it feels exciting and high power. Maybe there's some music going on. It's exciting and it makes you feel excited. But when you walk into a room that's just kind of like meh.
I mean, look how much energy and power is in a smile.
Right. Yeah.
A smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just smile at someone and it just exudes positive energy.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it just takes one encounter. So if you encounter an employee, if you encounter someone and you ask them, hey, how's it going as an employer? And they're like, it's going good.
So if you have I'm going to dig a little deeper. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to that same question, but I'm going to ask it a different way. So you mentioned we all have processes, methods, systems, whatever. So if, let's say job performance is down, let's say a team is underperforming or an individual is underperforming, how do you know if it's burnout? How do you know if it's burnout or just there's maybe something going wrong in their life, or maybe a process really does stink? Right. How do you know whether to invest in an intangible thing or a tangible thing like a human? Like how do you go about even identifying that and like finding out what the real problem is to get to that point where it's like, holy crap, I have a serious problem here. My employees are burnt out, they're disengaged, they're not happy. Sometimes it is a process, but a lot of times it isn't. So how do you navigate that?
Well, I think it starts with a conversation.
Okay.
I remember, in my military experience, the leaders would say, I have an open door policy.
Did they?
No.
Okay.
It was open. Yeah, you could come in and you could air your grievances and tell your concerns, but then it would come back to bite you later. Yeah. So that's one of the big challenges I think a lot of people face is that, hey, I want to listen to your story. Tell me what your challenges are, and then they use the very challenge that employee is willing to be vulnerable about against them. Like, hey, I have a kid that is not doing well at school, so I'm going to need to take some time off to kind of support him at home or whatever. They're like, okay, great, not a problem. And then using that against them in the future, you don't have enough time, so I'm not going to give you this other project because you can't handle it. So there's like, I think if you're going to have an open door policy and you really want to have a really great supported environment, you really have to have conversations with people, but in an open way, not if you share something with me, I'm going to use it against you. And I know that could be particularly dynamic in family situations.
Yeah.
And I think that may have been what happened in my dad with his brothers. Is like it just got, kind of a little animosity there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. And that's a challenge a lot of family businesses face.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things. It's that relational side.
Right.
It's ironic. You're a family. You love each other.
Yeah.
But once you start getting into the business and you're making decisions, or if you're a visionary, like this is what I think we need to do for the future. It's not an easy thing to navigate, because in a family business, even if you have titles, you're all part of the business. You all care.
Yeah.
It can be a tough thing to do.
Yeah, but having those tough conversations, like allowing for that chaos, even if it doesn't feel good to you to ask that question because you think you know the answer, that chaos is going to create more innovation than avoiding it.
So where do you think, so with the exceptional outcomes model, build on the principles of engage, exceed, and excel. Like I said, a big portion of my audience is family-owned businesses. Yeah. How do you serve and help family businesses the most, particularly with maybe some of those inside struggles and challenges? What can your program help them with?
Yeah, well, I have some things that are more targeted towards large organizations. Not to say that family businesses can't be large or large organizations.
Yeah, they can be different sizes.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. But just creating that kind of consistency. Consistency.
I like it.
Yeah.
We'll go with it. It's a new word.
Words.
I like the consistency of this.
Right. This is really consistent. Yes. Giving things that you can use along the way. So I'm creating like this list. I think it's over 240 tips now that give people little tangible things that they can do to improve their lives so that they can thrive. And, from an individual to an organization, some of the tips and things I've come up with, like I have a video series that just came out, 52weekstothrive.com.
Nice.
And
Plug
using,
it.
I know, right? But the reason I did that is because people come up to me and they look at me. I'm a mom of 6. I'm married for 23 years and I'm doing all these crazy things, even including other projects that we're not even talking about here. And they're like, how do you do it all?
That's what I said.
And I stopped and I was like, that's a great question. How do I do it all? Well, I started making a list of all the things that I do and why I do them. And it really came down to like, it's a lot about mindset. It's a lot about how I approach my time. It's how I prioritize, and all these different things kind of ended up this like lengthy list that now I can share with people, whether it's an individual or an organization, that gives them just little ways to tweak their process. And it's not complicated. It's like, have a to-do list, but only, put 3 on your list for today. Like it's just simple strategies that will make a world of difference in your life.
Speaking of strategy, thank you. You just walked right into my next question. What is a purpose-driven strategy? What does that mean? That's a term that you use, purpose-driven strategy. What's a purpose-driven strategy?
Yeah. So I have a mentor. I surround myself with mentors and coaches all the time. Oh. And over the last several years, it has paid off more than tenfold. Always sharpening the blade, huh? Right, that's right. That's so nice. I've got a mentor, Jim Steffen, and he's been in corporate training for 50 plus years, trained over 500 Fortune 500 companies. Like, he knows what he's talking about. And he taught me a strategy that I applied, and it's wonderful. And it was, what do you really want in life? Like, no, what do you really want out of your life? And you take the time to focus on what it is that I really want out of life. And you post that on the wall. And then every minute of every day, you think about your min, which is also a Jim Steffen thing. Most important now is my decision, is what I'm doing right now the most important use of my time that aligns with my life statement. So my life statement, I don't have it memorized, but it's something about sharing what I can to allow people in the world to view others as a story, not just as either an obstacle or not just as one person in their life, but to see every individual as a story. So, which is in this world today where everyone is like, it's very black and white, and you have to like this or else you're the enemy, or you have to, avoid this or you're like evil. It's looking at a person whether they agree with you politically or religiously or life, your morals and values or not, look at them as an individual. Just like I said earlier, it's about the journey they've been on. And I don't know where they started. So where they're at now may not look like something I would want, but that doesn't mean that they weren't somewhere way worse, a long time ago. Like there are people at all different points in their life.
We don't know their story.
Yeah, we should, don't be so quick to judge.
Yeah, we don't know their story.
Yeah,
so it goes back to your son a little bit.
Yeah. So every time, and that's like the revelation for me, right, is seeing everything my son's gone through and how people perceive him and how he perceives himself, and seeing what beauty has grown out of that. And if we could just look at each other as a story and see that there's so much more below the surface, then maybe we would have a much more positive outcome in the world. So that's what I think about every day. If I have a life purpose, is what I'm doing now the best use of my time?
And you have to make sacrifices, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge for people. They want to find that purpose, but there have to be things you have to give up, right?
Yeah. Instant gratification is our worst enemy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that leaders can do is help others find purpose, but obviously purpose has to come from within, right? So how does that work? How does that work together? How does an organization working closely with their employees to ask those tough questions, have those conversations, show they care, help them be more engaged, right? And everything. I'm assuming it's a concert, right? There's a responsibility the individual has, and then there's a responsibility the workplace has. Is that correct, or am I okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of both.
Okay. So what is it? So how does your program help others? Does your program help others find purpose, or does your program inspire people to find purpose?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because I don't mind getting in. Excuse me. I don't mind getting into the weeds on little practical strategies, right? But ultimately, it comes down to, I think, if you don't have a purpose or a vision, it's kind of like setting a goal. And I'm not saying like your purpose or vision has to be like crazy or it has to be complicated. Like it can be super simple. But if you don't have a goal that you're aiming for, you're not going to land anywhere, or you're just going to go with the tide. And that could be good or that could be bad. But every company that has a vision or a purpose, like, because like it just popped in my head, like Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. And I think that's crazy.
It is crazy.
But like,
he'll do it.
Right? I think so. I think it's going to happen.
I do.
Absolutely. But it's having a purpose and a vision. And when you have a purpose and a vision for your company, for your life, you have something to aim for. You not even to aim for, you have something to hope for. And then obstacles that come up along the way, you're going to see them differently. You're going to find ways to route around them. You're going to find ways to engage them. Or sometimes you're going to realize it's not really a problem. We thought it was a problem, but it's not, Like
it's
sometimes
not.
we get.
It's not.
I know. That's a running joke in my family for years. So my husband and I, whenever there's something that we think is a challenge, he'll say, "Oh, we thought it was a problem, but it's not."
It's not. I remember that from your story.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you give obviously you speak to audiences. I'm assuming you work with people on a micro level, like organizations, individuals, and then do you have programs that people can, or do you have programs in place yet where people can maybe learn, do you have resources, if you will, available for people?
Well, I'm working on putting together a program that people, I would give the license over to, corporations and things to use that would complement the 52 weeks to thrive.
Right.
And
that's cool.
So that's kind of cool. I mean, it's something you could use in your sales meeting. It's like 60 seconds to 2 minutes of material. It's not a lot of time, but it boils down to effective strategies. And then I would like to start maybe recording some of the sessions I do and then have them be available on demand.
That'd be cool.
For organizations. That way, if you're not quite at a place where you can bring me in, then maybe you can still offer it to your employees. Yeah.
So of all the things you do, finding purpose in what you do, we talked about a lot of things you do. What is of the work you do? I can't believe I actually went. I told people not to do that. I just went like this. Okay. Of all the things you do, what really drives you? Where do you thrive? What do you enjoy the most? Is it the public speaking? Is it the one-on-ones? Is it like what excites you? Because you do a lot, and you talk to people in different ways. What do you enjoy the most?
I think what I enjoy the most is seeing people transform.
Okay.
And that comes through all the things that I do.
All the things you do. Good answer.
Yeah, it truly is though. Like the writing books and doing the journey book stories, doing, some marriage ministry, and then doing orchestrated performance, and even working with my kids. I told my husband yesterday, I said, our kids are going to be driven crazy having a motivational speaker as a mom. Like,
yeah. I think I just want to say this. I think what's really cool though is that when you're let's say you're up on stage talking to a group of people, it has to be exciting to think, I might impact someone's life today.
Yeah.
I might change someone's life today.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And if you feel like that's where God placed you, in a strange way, you're doing God's work.
Absolutely.
You're doing if you really feel that, you can't touch it, see it, you can only feel it.
Right.
If you feel that all the time and you are really doing your life purpose,
yeah,
that's honoring your faith. That's honoring God. that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Which is, I guess, what you
Yeah.
want for everybody, right?
Yeah.
You want everyone to feel the way you feel.
Yeah, I sat down with a friend, a colleague, this has been a few months ago, and it was when I was kind of like really, really focusing on, okay, what does this look like?
Yeah.
Orchestrated performance. Now that I'm ruling it out, it's official, here we go, like what's it look like? And she came over and said, I want to give you an update from a year ago when we met. And I said, okay, great.
Isn't that crazy how it happens sometimes?
Yeah. So we sat down and I said, hey, I know this is crazy and I don't know where this is going to go, but would it be okay if I recorded us talking? So I sat down with her and recorded.
Interesting.
Yeah, we recorded the whole hour in my living room. And she looked at me and she said, Marcy, a year ago, you challenged me to a radical 10 minutes of change and it transformed my life.
Really? Wow.
And
and you didn't know that until a year later.
I had no idea.
That's wild.
I would check in occasionally, but sometimes, like real estate and sales and stuff, like you see people and I'm kind of the personality where like if I meet you once, you're my best friend forever. And every time I see you, it's like we've met for the first time and it's really great. And I'll pick up right where we left off. So it wasn't like we were detached necessarily, and social media obviously keeps people, I could see kind of what was going on. But she said, so she made a career change, and not total career change. She just shifted where she was headed as far as who she was working with and for. And she's like, it's impacted my marriage. It's impacted my daughter's life. It's impacted everything. And that moment, I knew.
Wow, it's like transformational.
I am here. This is the reason. And if I can transform one person in the audience, then I've met my goal.
There you go. My guess is you're doing more than one. That's really cool. And then what makes it even better is when it's not about you, it really is about the work you're doing.
Right.
That's really, not to throw, again, God and faith in there, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
If you're up there doing that and it's not about you, you really are just getting excited about changing lives.
Yeah. I'm a vessel.
That's a pretty amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And I think in order to do God's full purpose for your life, you have to be humble. I don't think it works if there's ego. I don't think it works if it's what's in it for me. Look at all the things you try. You tried a whole bunch of different things. So it's not like you're short on skills and talent and abilities, right? But this is now. How great you now feel like this is what I was born to do.
Right.
I think we'd all love to have that.
Yeah, and every experience I've had up to this point has perfectly formed me for where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm. I'm already, just as we're talking, I'm already thinking of some things. I embrace the kind of some of this. I do. I do one-on-ones and I do care about my employees. I do, but I'm already thinking about ways I can up my game. Honestly.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Anything else you want to share about your program? I know you don't want to get too deep into it because they can always learn more. But is there anything else you want to share?
I guess it's sort of that disengagement. Disengagement's really expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But engagement, that's priceless.
It is.
And it doesn't matter your organization. Like when you can find ways to engage with people, I think we overcomplicate things. So, how can we keep it simple? How can you, as a family-owned business, how can you simplify things so it's not so complicated? How can you delegate? That's another great one.
I wish I could find it. It's in my notes here with the statistics. I can't find it. I thought I had highlighted, but what you just said makes me think. There's all this big debate about how much people make and what they do, but that Gallup poll also revealed that 75% of people will stay on their job regardless of what they do and how much they make. If they feel they have purpose at work.
Right.
So the purpose at work becomes more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Because who's going to want to lose that. So if you really feel you have purpose at work and you have that feeling of like, I'm so fulfilled, who the heck is going to leave that for something else?
Yeah.
I can give you more money, but am I going to feel this way?
Right.
That's really powerful. So I think that's the cool thing is like, so if you're able to transform someone individually, that then it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Then all of a sudden, the energy they're giving off to their colleagues, the energy they're giving off to their suppliers and their vendors and their clients and their customers, and then they're taking it home. All of a sudden, this energy becomes almost like it's like a contagion.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it's making everyone around you better. Who's going to want to leave that? So all of a sudden now, employers who maybe can't compete on salary, I mean, all of a sudden they have employees that don't want to leave because they're too dang happy.
Right.
Who would you want to leave that?
No,
I wouldn't want to leave that.
Yeah, if you could fulfill a little bit of your purpose or passion at work, like
that's it. I mean, that is the plateau, right? That's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
To me, that's reaching the mountaintop.
Yeah, and in economics, not to bring up something negative, but in economics, when I studied, I took this class on Marxism. So we had to read the Communist Manifesto, just so like we could get a broad, experience, and it was surreal. And the teacher had us arguing the pros and cons. I remember writing a paper saying that I thought that there wasn't going to be this revolution ever. Because when people can't pursue their purpose and passions at work, they're going to find leisure ways to do that. And unless you're working yourself to the bone, which is also a risk, I suppose, you're going to be able to find passions outside of work. Like, whether it's going to concerts or whether it's serving the homeless or whether it's doing philanthropic.
Or worse, it could be destructive.
Yeah, it can be the opposite too.
Depression, drugs, alcohol.
Yeah. So as employers, if you can offer someone a bit of purpose at work, and then they don't have purpose at home, maybe it gives them extra drive to increase everything.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. It's cool stuff. All right. There's a lot we can talk about, but
just 2 more hours.
I think we covered everything. So I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. I always do dad jokes. So I'm going to ask you 3 dad jokes.
Okay.
And if you don't get them, it's okay.
I will laugh.
Yeah. You better laugh. Come on. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Why did the public speaker, I don't mean to get close to home, but I'm going to do
fine.
it. Why did the public speaker hire a pitching coach?
Why did they hire a pitching coach? So they could go to bat?
because she needed to improve her delivery.
Oh, that's nice. Nice.
Why did the public speaker become a gardener?
Ooh, to plant seeds for the future.
Pretty good. That's close. I'll give you credit. I'll give you credit for that, because she knew how to plant ideas and watch them grow.
Nice.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner on that one.
I know. Yeah.
Good job. Why did the public speaker bring a ladder to the presentation?
Well, it's to achieve greater heights, I hope.
Oh. To reach new heights in performance.
See?
Good job. 2 out of 3. Dang, I did not expect that. Man, you're sharp as a whip, man. You should be a public speaker.
I should be.
You should try to inspire others.
I should think about it.
Man. If you can do 2 out of 3 on these dad jokes, you can accomplish anything.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you for humoring me. I just don't know if I humored you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm still laughing.
Okay.
Inside.
Okay. So here's my final question for you. I'd like to hear your perspective on something I know many leaders are struggling with. What advice do you have for leaders trying to balance business success with employee well-being? Gonna hit you with the big one.
Yeah.
So what would be your big piece of advice, leaving them with, okay, if you're trying to be successful in business, focus on the numbers, focus on the processes. You gotta earn a living, but at the same time balancing it with making sure that my employees are engaged, they're not burnout, there's well-being. What's your best advice for them?
Yeah, it's something that I think I've learned through the years is if you've got this huge goal, if it's financial, if it's business growth, is to list the goal and then work backwards and find a way that your employees can plug into that, and not like as a cog in the wheel necessarily, but how can you engage your employees in a way that makes them part of your process? And I'm not saying you have to give, your employees, some sort of direct stock or even, the ability to change your projection. But you'd be surprised at how much innovation can come by engaging your employees. Just how much, giving them just a little bit of buy-in. So thinking of how you can tie in the experience of the employees
what they
to
do
the broader experience, and how it connects, and how you can see them. So like, think Rube Goldberg, I think is what it's called. There's like this lady who was really innovative, and every piece of the contraptions that she would make, or I'm horrible with some of these details, but Rube Goldberg, there's a school that does these projects, and a lot of like middle schoolers do these projects where there's like all these little pieces, and you're moving like a marble down a track, or your end goal is to get a pin to pop a balloon. So you create this complicated process. And I feel like that's what we do sometimes. But even a complicated process, every little piece in that process can make a huge impact for your ROI, for your end game. So I think thinking of it not as I'm a business and I'm going to make all these people do the things to make me succeed. It's how can I help each individual in my company succeed so that we all grow together.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
You did. But now you made me think of one more question. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
So how do you think sometimes people are too quick to, I watched a YouTube video. Do you think sometimes people are too quick to fire someone? I mean, is it possible that their poor performance isn't because they don't know how to do the job or they don't want to do the job? Is it possible that burnout and disengagement could be the leading factor into that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, like exit interviews, I think, are very telling. But what if you could have an exit interview without it being an exit interview?
Ooh.
What if you could do it along the way?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like why does it have to be an exit interview? Like, what if something could have been improved earlier to avoid the exit?
Take a note. You better incorporate that into your stuff if you don't. I like that.
Yeah.
It's like, don't wait until it's over to find out why it's over.
Don't wait till it's too late.
That's right. Okay. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's like they say, like, everyone shows up and shows they care when you're dead. Well, why not show up at various points throughout someone's life?
Yeah, I use this a lot. It's like, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you have right now? And, why not do that with employees? If you could wave a magic wand, what would your job look like?
Yeah.
Then you might even hear their aspirations.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this. Man.
Good.
I'm glad I prepared for this. Truth be told, I kind of told you before we started, but like, the more I got to know you, like the more I prepared for this and really looked at what you do and why you do it. I emailed this to you. I'm going to be transparent to my audience, but like, I've had a lot of great guests that I care about, I know personally, but honestly, I was just, it was a real honor to have you here. Seriously.
I appreciate that.
Like what you're doing, like just watching your journey, all that you've done. I looked at your LinkedIn, I'm like, I was just like those people. How in the world does she do all this? I always admire people that can find graceful ways to do much. And I don't know, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. I think this subject is really important.
Absolutely.
I just love your personality and your energy, and it was a real pleasure. So thank you for educating and informing and hopefully inspiring
I appreciate
the audience.
You having me and your listeners for putting up with me.
Yeah, you're pretty cool. All right, so I want people to learn.
I need to record that. Can you say that one more time
you
for
are
my kids?
Pretty cool.
See, hear that, kids?
Yeah, your
Mom's pretty cool.
Your mom is cool, whether you like it or not. So I do want people to learn more about you. I don't want them to just Google Marcy Renken. So you can go to your website, right?
Yes.
Orchestratedperformance.com.
Yeah.
Orchestratedperformance.com. And then the other one you mentioned was 52weekstothrive.com.
Yep.
And those are two different things, right?
One ties in. I mean, the 52 Weeks to Thrive is part of my website.
Part of your website.
Yeah, you'll get there either way.
Okay. And then on LinkedIn, Marcy Renken. I told you again, MarcyRenken.
And it's Renken.
That's what I said.
You heard your Indiana. Well, it sounded almost like an A, so I just want to clarify that. We should argue about this.
Huh?
We should argue about this.
Okay. So just put Marcy Renken in LinkedIn, put it in YouTube, and put it on Facebook. Though on Facebook, you have your name, speaker.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Instagram.
Right.
You're everywhere.
I'm everywhere.
You
except
are
maybe
everywhere.
Twitter, X,
You're like
whatever it's called.
It's like Twitter, right? I know it's right. You're not on Twitter. When I was little, someone said, "You're like the wind. You're everywhere."
Yeah. And I made some attempts at YouTube and what's it called, TikTok? Yeah. I really just commit to mostly Facebook and LinkedIn because those are they're kind of up my alley.
Those are the two. Okay.
Those are the primary. Yeah.
All right. So you can plug. I'm going to let you plug yourself a little bit. So, what is the best method for our audience to request information about Orchestrated Performance, or contacting you or engaging with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my website's a great start. There's a contact page right on my website. Smoke signals do sometimes work. I do like a nice bonfire. But really just reaching out, you can Marcy that's funny. I don't even know my own contact information. speakermarcy@gmail.com is my direct email. Speaker Marcy. I know, it sounds fancy, doesn't it? I thought it was so cheesy, but that was before I knew which direction I was going to go. And everyone's like, I kind of like how simple it is.
It is.
So yeah.
I like it. Okay. Anything else you want to share before I close up?
I would just say stay in the moment, focus on one small improvement you can make. Surround yourself with mentors that are going to help you grow no matter where you're at in your life, no matter how novice you are or how advanced you are. Never stop. Everyone needs a coach. And I mean, I haven't gotten into the coaching a whole lot, but gosh, I'm not opposed to it. But just having someone that you can look up to, someone who has been where you want to go, is going to gain you so much more value than going to someone who you just like to talk to. I'll have to. You speak very confidently. You've mentioned the coaching thing 2 or 3 times. So I almost wonder if we need to have you on. I'm serious. Sure. Sometime talk about how coaching has influenced the speaker because there are good coaches and there are bad coaches and there are different types of coaches. Yep. So that's a subject in and of itself. Yes. So I have a guest coming on April 20, at the end of this month, who's coming on for the second time because there was something he shared in our first one back in January of last year that I said, I'm going to have you back someday. Right. So we might have to have you come back and talk about your journey as a speaker. I'll come back if you keep dad jokes as part of this. Well, I'm going to find ones that you can't answer. That's right. Because my ego, I can't, 2 out of 3 is really impressive. Yeah. And they were fast. If you made it about something, I don't know anything about, maybe like concrete. Yeah. I mean, that right there, that's the cool factor. It won't be about concrete. I know how to identify bad concrete. That's right. That's right. All right. Well, thank you for listening to and or watching this episode of Up in Your Family Business podcast. You can find more episodes on iHeart Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, element212.com. So until next time, may you, your family, your team, your customers, and your community be truly blessed. Have a great day.